For those of you that don't know, not only am I an Agile coach, I'm also an ex-programmer. What that means is I have a lot of passionate opinions about how to write code and how to write code well. And like any opinion about development, some of them are wrong, some of them are right. I've wanted to start this channel for a while, and now this is going to be the first video. Today on LinkedIn, I saw someone post a message about a common error in JavaScript. And the error, it reminded me of a problem that I've often faced in my own development career. And that was, do we use lambda expressions inside of our own comparators? Or should we have separate methods that are testable? Let's dive into some code. I'm going to show the problem that this poster had on LinkedIn, and then how we can actually write that in a more testable manner. Whether or not you agree, that's up to you. This is just another approach, and you can look at this approach and maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. Let's get to the code. Here's the code. We have Node.js with the Jest backend for testing, and we're going to sort this data set. I wonder what's going to happen. Uh-oh, it failed. Why did this fail? Well, it was sorted wrong, clearly. Why is that? Well, it turns out sort by default is using the string comparator, and that's not what we want to use when we're sorting integers, right? So what we need to do is actually change this to use our own custom comparator. And here I am, I'm going to write a custom comparator. Just the standard comparator. You'd normally put this in a lambda expression directly in the sort. Now that this is written, let's save it, execute, and see what happens. Uh-oh, still an error. I guess I actually forgot to update the method inside the code. Let's fix that. There we go. Now see what happens. Boom! It works! How about that? Who would have known the code actually works? Okay, but is this it, or do we need some more test? I think we need some more test. What about if we have less elements than 5? How can I test this? I think I'm going to have to change the code just a little bit more to be able to test this, and that's to use dependency injection or dependency inversion. So I'm actually going to write the custom method for loading these numbers and pull it outside. So in our test classes, we can actually inject a different method for these numbers. By the way, if you're curious, that's from the solid principles. We're going to get a funny error here because I forgot to remove the const from the index methods at the top of this file. Let me go ahead and remove that and see if the code works. And that also, it kind of reminds me, there's something else we're going to need to test. And we'll get to that right after we do the test for 0 elements. I'm not sure I trust the order, so let me actually change the code here and make sure I'm specifically injecting for every test, just in case to be on the safe side. There we go. Let's run our test, see what happens. There we go. Okay, what's our next test? Next, well, we want to test 0 elements, right? That should be an easy test. And I'm testing because you always want to test your edge cases. And sometimes the edge cases crash. Let's run it, see what happens. Do our test pass? Yep, test pass. Okay, now remember when I was talking about constant at the top of the file? That leads me to think that there's another potential error. What happens if we actually change the underlying data from that array? And that could be important. Maybe the code is actually changing stuff it shouldn't be changing. Let's write a test to see if the underlying array gets changed when the get lowest 5 numbers method is called. Now that we've gotten this test written, let's run it and see what happens. All we have to do is clone the data set to make sure we're not changing the data, and we can use the JavaScript spread operator to make sure this happens. Make sure we copy and paste the data set so we don't get an error there. All right, let's run it and see what happens. There we go. All the tests have passed. This method is more testable than using an n-line lambda expression. And for those that are watching, there's an argument about test-driven development. What you saw me do here is actually called test last development, where I wrote the test after the code was written. And this is the way most developers actually do their code. They sort of sketch out the code first, then they write the test, and they call that test-driven development. To be technical, it's test last development. But who cares? We got the results we needed. Questions, comments, put them below.